Throughout history, people have reported encounters with strange objects in the sky, glowing discs, silent triangles, and fast-moving lights that defy explanation. Some believe these sightings prove extraterrestrial visitors, while skeptics argue they have natural or human-made explanations. Yet, with increasing reports from credible sources, the question remains, what is out there? Twin Pines, Montana, 1983 was the kind of place where nothing happened. A quiet town surrounded by endless stretches of pine forests and open highway. It was a stop on the way to somewhere else. The old rest stop on Montana Highway 287 hadn't been maintained in years, and most travelers avoided it unless they were truly desperate. That night, Officer Frank Delaney found himself parked just outside of it, finishing a stale cup of coffee when the call came in. Someone had reported strange lights flickering near the rest stop. The dispatcher sounded bored, like she didn't believe it was serious. Probably just teenagers messing around, she had said. But Frank had been on the job long enough to know that small towns like this held secrets, and weird things surfaced when least expected. So he started up his cruiser and rolled down the empty highway. The moment he arrived, he knew something was wrong. The air was oddly still, thick with an eerie silence that felt unnatural. The lights weren't coming from the rest stop, but from the tree line beyond it. A pulsating glow, soft, brightening, slowly, bathed the pines in an unnatural silver sheen. Frank reached for his flashlight and stepped out of his car. His boots crunched against the gravel as he moved toward the source of the glow. It wasn't headlights, that much was certain. He realized the light emanated from something hovering just above the ground as he approached. A smooth, metallic craft, silent, motionless, and about the size of a sedan, floated inches above the dirt. There were no seams, no visible markings, just a perfectly smooth, disc-like surface reflecting the moonlight. Instinct took over before rational thought. Frank's hand went to his gun, and he fired before he realized what he was doing. The shot rang out, shattering the unnatural silence. The bullet never hit anything. Instead, it vanished mid-air as though it had never existed. A second later, the craft blinked out of sight, leaving nothing but a slight hum lingering in the air. Frank exhaled a nervous laugh. He holstered his gun and returned to his cruiser, shaking his head at his reaction. Whatever it had been, it was gone now. It could be a trick of the light. Perhaps he was just overtired. Either way, it wasn't his problem anymore. Hours later, just before dawn, he spotted a car speeding down Highway 287. It was an old sedan, moving too fast for an empty highway at that hour. He flipped on his sirens and pulled over. Standard procedure. As he approached the vehicle, something felt off. The air around him felt thick, heavier than before. He shined his flashlight into the driver's window. Two figures sat in the front seats, motionless. Their skin was smooth, too smooth. No noses, no mouths, no features at all. Just blank, flesh-colored surfaces where faces should have been. Frank's stomach twisted. The two figures turned their heads toward him, perfectly synchronized, as if controlled by the same invisible string. The radio in his cruiser crackled behind him, spitting out static. Then, in a whisper that didn't come from either of them, but seemed to echo from everywhere, he heard it. "You shouldn't have done that." Frank staggered back, his heart hammering. The road, the car, and even the sky seemed to shimmer momentarily, as if reality had wavered. He turned and sprinted back to his cruiser. His hands fumbled as he yanked open the door and jumped inside. He threw it into gear and floored it, the tires screeching against the pavement. He didn't stop until he was back at the station. He burst through the doors, panting. The other officers looked at him like he was crazy, but he didn't care. He tried to explain what had happened, but the words sounded ridiculous as soon as he said them out loud. When he convinced one of the rookies to return to the highway, the sedan was gone, with no sign of it, no skid marks, and nothing. But Frank knew what he saw, and he knew, deep down, that whatever those things were, they weren't done with him yet. In the following weeks, strange things kept happening. His radio would crackle with bursts of static in the middle of his shift. His reflection in the windows seemed delayed by a fraction of a second, and sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he swore he could still hear that whisper, "You shouldn't have done that." He started losing sleep. Every time he drifted off, he dreamed of that highway, of the faceless passengers in that old sedan. Sometimes they stood at the foot of his bed, their blank heads tilting slightly as if watching him. Other times he dreamt he was back at the rest stop, staring up at the sky, unable to move. The dreams grew more vivid and real each night until he was afraid to sleep. One evening, as he drove home after a long shift, his headlights caught something standing at the edge of the road. It was a tall figure, too tall, its limbs too elongated, its head featureless and smooth. It didn't move as he passed. It just turned its head to follow him with unnatural precision. He gripped the wheel tighter and kept driving, refusing to look in the rearview mirror. The next morning, his cruiser wouldn't start. The battery was drained, though he had just replaced it the week before. His wristwatch had stopped at 3:17 a.m., the same time he had passed that figure the night before. His hands shook as he tried to light a cigarette, but he couldn't stop them from trembling. Frank thought about leaving Twin Pines and maybe moving to a city where the strange things lurking in the dark didn't feel so close, but a part of him knew it wouldn't matter. Whatever he had disturbed that night on the highway wasn't tied to this town. It was tied to him, and it wasn't going to let him go.